Welcome back, everyone, to our Abhidhamma study class with Siara Pariyatti Linkara. Today is class 33, and we will be studying the combinations of mental factors, and this will be the second part of that topic. Before we begin, we would like to invite Siara to lead us in saying Namo Tassa before we begin the class. Siara, if you would like to lead us, please. Siara, I'm sorry to interrupt. I don't think you...
Okay, thank you. Let's start our today's Abhidhamma study, reciting Namo Tassa 3 times together. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa.
Thank you very much, Siara, and leading us in Namo Tassa. We will now begin the Abhidhamma lecture. Siara, whenever you are ready.
Okay. Yes. Yes, so today Abhidhamma lesson is combination of mental feathers. So this is called the combination method. In the chapter 2, the mental feathers, studying about the mental feather Jittasika. So we already counted the mental feather and we have studied about how the mental feathers arise with the consciousness. So the consciousness, associated consciousness for each mental feathers, we have studied that is called the association method, Sambayoganaya. And in this lesson, we will continue studying about the combination method. We already explained the basics information about the combination method, which is called Sangahanaya. In this Sangahanaya, we will find out the mental feathers, specific mental feathers for each consciousness. So there, in previous lesson, I have counted the 33 naya, 33 nayas as mentioned in the Abhidhamma Sangaha. So when we find out the mental feathers for each consciousness, and in order to make easy to remember, easy to memorize, we have already made the groups following the Abhidhamma Sangaha. These are the related mental feather groups. And so the methods, 33 altogether, and we already counted. And starting from Lokuttara Citta, we will continue studying about the mental feather, just counting. If we know the principles of the association and combination method, that is not difficult. So here, before we continue and let's review just short. We already know. So Lokuttara Citta, in last 40 Lokuttara Citta. So 8 Lokuttara Citta multiplied by the 5 jhana become 40. These 40 will be in 5 methods. So roughly we can say the Anya Samana group and the beautiful 23, because the Abhamanya exceptions altogether 36 will be common, or at most, we can say at most the mental feathers, the number of mental feathers. And for the Mahakata Citta, sublime consciousness, instead of Abhamanya, will already become exception and become 35. Then for Kamavachara Sovana, we will count the largest number. So with the all beautiful feather, this will be variables in the Mahavipaka and Mahakiriya. Because there, Virati and Appamanya will be exception accordingly. That is why in this 38 is referring to Mahakusala. So if you know, this is easy. So here in Kamavachara Savana, 12 neya, because we were divided into two together. So just Asankarika and Sasankarika coming together again. Jnana Sambyuddha, Jnana Vibhuddha different. But in this case, Asankarika and Sasankarika no difference. That is why only 12. If Asankarika and Sasankarika different, will be 24, the same as the number of the consciousness. Because in this case, the making the variable, we can say the variable manifestos or Tinamita cannot be associated with the either Asankarika or Sasankarika, because this is beautiful case. Since we have talked about the nature, so unwholesome manifesta associated with only unwholesome, and beautiful manifesta associated with only beautiful. So Anya Samana going to both sides. And if you can keep this information in your mind, it's easy. Then for Akusala, so changing the former three, all are beautiful consciousness. That's why always have to consider second group is beautiful feather. And for Akusala, you just need to consider unwholesome instead of beautiful feather. So Anya Samana will be 13 and beautiful feather 14. So altogether 27 will be associated. Then there will be 7 neya. So this 7 neya are a little bit complicated, and we will see how it's happening. And for the Ahituka consciousness, only one group of Anya Samana can be associated. And even then, that group, Chanda will be exception, because Chanda never associate with the Ahituka. So there in Ahituka, 4 neyas, altogether 33. So today, as part 2, let's start to count. And this one, just to know, how you remember the principle. We don't need to learn new one. Okay, so for the first jhana, Anya Samana 13. Because first jhana, no, Anya Samana 13. First jhana with the Vitaka, Vichara together. Even the Vitaka, Vichara come together. So first jhana, no exception for the Anya Samana. And for the beautiful manifestos, among the 25, the Appamanya exception. So can you say why Appamanya exception? So can you think of that?
Because in Lokuttara Chitta, they do not take the concept of sentient beings as an object, only take Nibbana as an object.
Of course, yes. This is the, we are studying Lokuttara Chitta. So searching for the manifesta that can associate with Lokuttara Chitta. So Appamanya will be exception. We already mentioned that. Appamanya always take the concept of beings. And it's called the Satta Panyati. It is object. And for the Lokuttara, all Lokuttara consciousness take Nibbana as their object. That's why the manifestos and consciousness, when they arise together in the same group, they cannot take different object. All the whole group take the same object. That's why there must be the same object. So it is impossible Appamanya and Lokuttara Chitta to take the same object. So with the reason, if you remember why this become exception, you will not forget. And also, you can count without keeping this number in your mind, you can get it. So here, the first, second, third, fourth, and fifth jhana, Lokuttara Citta is divided into 5 groups because this we talk about the combination method in relation to the large number, large enumeration of the Lokuttara Citta. So if we say brief enumeration, we just say the same as the 36 because the common one is the first jhana. So in large among the 40 Lokuttara Citta, if we count it, there will be variation. That's why we need to count in 5 method. Okay, so second jhana, how many? Can you guess?
35, because there's no vitaka.
Of course, second jhana, we already learned from the beginning at the chapter 1, second jhana and vitaka are not associated. So when the meditation and meditative consciousness reach to second jhana, vitaka already dropped, according to Abhidhamma. So in the sutta, this second jhana is not, they counted, directly go to the third jhana as the second. So in sutra enumeration, only 4 jhana. And for the Abhidhamma enumeration, altogether 5 jhana. And for the third jhana, how many?
34, because there's no vitaka and also no vichara.
Right. So here, vitaka, vichara is exception. So here, for the beautiful Paṭivedha, no change at all. Always same. Yeah, except Abhidhamma 23. So in the Pakinaka, so we can say that in the Pakinaka group, they make the difference. So 34, and in the 4th jhana, 33, including Piti. 3 become exception. So 10, Anya Samana, and 23 become 33. And for the 5th jhana, how many?
Also 33.
33, right? So what is the difference, this 33 and this 33?
The feeling is still present, but the feeling changes from sukha to upekkha.
Great. In the 4th jhana, the feeling is happiness. Happiness, sukha vedana, happiness. In the 5th jhana, upekkha vedana, so the equanimity, feeling. This is the difference in both number same, but the difference is feeling. So now you see that if you can keep this information in mind, the Lokuttara Sanghaneya is easy. So let's continue. So here just the feeling is different, I showed. Then let's continue for the Mahagata consciousness. So Mahagata also divided into 5 groups, and first, 3, second, up to 4 jhana, or 3 from a 4 jhana. And for the 5th jhana, 15. Can you count the 15 consciousness of 5th jhana?
The 5th jhana citta in the Rupa Vachara, which is 3.
3.
Then the 12 Arupa Vachara cittas, which is also all 5th jhana.
Okay, great. So we have to always remember, all immaterial consciousness are counted under the enumeration of 5th jhana, under the 5th jhana. So if you know, let's continue. So the at most 35, we already know. Anya Samana 13, and beautiful except Pariyatti, so 22 become 35. Then also the same method applying to the sublime consciousness. So continuing and making exception for 2nd jhana, vitaka 34, 3rd jhana, vitaka vichara 33, 4th jhana, vitaka vichara and piti 32. Then 5th jhana, it's changing, the manifestors of feeling, that, and also what makes different from Lokuttara and sublime consciousness is here Abhidhamma come to play in the important role, because for my 4 jhana, Appamanya can be associated. But in the fifth jhana, Appamanya cannot associate because, can you give the reason why?
The Appamana, if you take Appamana as the object of meditation, you can only attain up to third jhana. You cannot obtain to the fourth jhana. For the fourth jhana, you can only take Upekkha as the object.
Okay, yeah, great.
After the fifth jhana.
Fifth jhana, right? So Appamanya, you have to know Appamanya here refers to Appamanya refers to Karuna and Mudita. But in chapter 9, when we count the complete set of the Appamanya illimitable meditation, it's become 4, right? So Karuna, Mudita, and we have to add Metta and Upekkha as well. So Metta, Karuna, Mudita, Upekkha. These are 4. But here in this case, whenever we talk about the Appamanya Cetasika, only 2 are Karuna and Mudita. So these Karuna and Mudita, when they practice, when the meditator practice these 2 meditation, Karuna and Mudita, also they need the support of the Somanasa feeling. Somanasa feeling. That is why these meditation in method can raise, can give rise only up to the 4th jhana, from the 4th jhana. It cannot give rise to the 5th jhana because in 5th jhana, they cannot get the support of Somanasa feeling because they the Karuna and Mudita, they need in the sublime stage, they need the support or Somanasa feeling, happiness. But in the Lokiya feeling, the Lokiya consciousness, in the sense-pure consciousness, Kama Vachara consciousness, it does not necessary to have the support of Somanasa. This was see in the next combination method or Kama Vachara Sovana. This will not make different. So here for the Karuna and Mudita, Appamanya always associated with the form of 4th jhana, but the 5th jhana, it becomes exception. That is why instead of the same number with the 4th jhana, like the Lokuttara, so here different. So you have to take a note here. In Lokuttara, 4th jhana and 5th jhana come in the same number, but the feeling is different. But in the sublime consciousness, Mahagata consciousness, even the number is different because Appamanya become exception. So for the Viddhati, why the Viddhati is exception? So in case of Viddhati always takes the object of commitment. That is called the transgression, the object of transgression. That is, we take a mitava aramana. For example, if someone trying to kill, the object is living being. In the same way, if he abstain from killing, the object is living being. Living beings, something subject to be killed. In the same way, and if someone trying to steal, the object is something to be stolen. In the same way, if he abstain also, the same object taken. That's why the object of transgression is the object of Viddhati. So in order to arise the Viddhati, there must be that object. But in the Mahakata consciousness, sublime consciousness, they have the sovereign object. So form of 4th jhana, they are taking the counterpart sign, Paṭipaka Nimitta, as their object. And here in the 5th jhana, there can be some difference. And sometimes it takes the counterpart sign as their object. And sometimes in the Arupa Vachara Citta, and sometimes reality is come to be the object. So in the fifth jhana will be different. But all of them are not related to the object or transgression. This is which is called the Videka Aramana, taken by the Vidati. So Vidati always exception, become always exception. And Abhamanya is only in case of fifth jhana. So now if you know this information, it is enough to say you can count the main factors. Okay, so here also the feeling is the same as the Lokuttara. So former fourth jhana associated with joyful feeling, and the last one, fifth jhana, associated with equanimity feeling. Okay, so let's move to the combination method of the Kamavajara Citta, Kamavajara Sovana Citta, so sense pure beautiful consciousness, 24. Here, 12 method. And 12 method, 12 neya. We can easily know the 4 neya. Each of these groups have 4 neya, so become 12. And so for the first group, very wholesome Mahakusala, this is the largest number. Anya Samana 30 and beautiful Veda 25, 38. And for the result down, it become different. Exception, all 5 of the Vidati 3 and Abhamanya 2 become exception. So beautiful Veda only 20 become the 33 is at most in the great result. Now for the functional consciousness that arises only in the Arahat's mental process, Arahat's mental process. So here, Vidati is not necessary, because when we talk about the Vidati, their nature is deliberately abstinence. So that deliberately abstinence nature cannot happen in the Arhat mind, because it's already removed the cause to transgress or to commit with the unwholesome. So for Arahat, it is not necessary Vidati nature to arise. That's why Vidati become exception, become 35. These are at most. So in the sense pure consciousness, here, if we count it for each group, we need to know the 4 couplets. So 4 couplets is Asankarika 1 and Sasankarika 1. So we call that is couplet 2 together. The first couplet is Somnasa Sahagata. So we will call them according to the number of couplets. So the Somnasa Sahagata Jnana Sambhyuta. This is identification of the first one. The variation to make it 2, the Asankarika and Sasankarika. Then second couplet, so still Somnasa Sahagata, different is Jnana Vipayuta, dissociated from knowledge. And the third couplet changed the feeling, Ubeka Sahagata, Jnana Sambhyuta. And the fourth one, the Ubeka Sahagata, but Jnana Vipayuta. So in this way, we need to keep in mind these 4 couplets to apply into all 3 groups, Mahakusala, Mahavipaka, and Mahakiriya. So in this way, all groups belong to 4 neya, become 12 neya. It's also easy, right? Then what will make it different here is this add mode. And for Somnasa Sahagata, the feeling is happiness. So PT will not be an exception. So PT associated. Because here Jnana Sambhyuta, the wisdom faculty also will be associated. That make different with the second couplet. Second couplet is the same. So PT, you don't need to consider the same feeling. And here, Jnana Vibhuta, that's why I dissociated from jnana. So wisdom faculty will be exception. This is different from the first couplet and second couplet. So for the third couplet, because this is Upekkha Sahagata, the piti will not be there. And jnana Sambhyuta associated with the wisdom faculty, jnana Vibhuta dissociated from. So if you know this, and you can count all the number. Okay, so for the great wholesome, remember the great wholesome have the large number of 38 as usual. So based upon 38, you need to consider how many can be. So for the past couplet, how many mental feather can be associated?
38.
38 all, right? So all 38. And for the second, because
37.
yeah, why jnana is exception?
Because it's jnana Vibhuta.
Right, this jnana Vibhuta, very easy, easy to know. And jnana Vibhuta, so jnana is exception. What is mean jnana? Do you know what is mean jnana?
Wisdom root faculty, wisdom faculty, Chitasika.
Right, wisdom faculty Chitasika, that is Panyendriya Chitasika. So except Panyendriya Chitasika, 24, beautiful, so altogether 37. And for the third couplet, how many?
37.
37?
Because there's no PT, but there is jnana.
Right. So here, in the beautiful feather, no exception, because this becomes jnana Sambhyuta again. But because the feeling is Upekkha Sahagata for the third couplet, so it becomes the PT exception, the 37. So for the fourth one,
36, because there's no PT and also no jnana.
right. So this is 36. Mostly for the beginner, this complicated. If we directly count at 12, without making this kind of clear interpretation, or number are changing and why we don't know, and then continue and confuse. So if you know the reason and then you make an enumeration by yourself, it's not complicated. And here, if you know the principle, so remember in the Mahavibhaga, so let's consider about the Mahavibhaga. So the first couplet, how many?
33.
33, because 5 will be exception, right? For Mahavibhaga, Virati, Abhidhamma, 2 group together, 5 mental fetters will be exception. So for the past couplet will be 33. And second couplet,
32.
32. And the third,
32.
And the fourth,
31.
31, is for the Mahakiriya, let's consider, Mahakiriya, first couplet, how many?
35.
35, because only 3 of Virati will be exception, so they become 35. And second?
34.
34, third?
34.
34, and fourth?
33.
33. Yeah, it's easy, If you just you just need to keep the principle in your mind. That's all. If you try to remember, very, very difficult and easy to forget and complicated. Okay, so let's talk about the variation. We already talked about the gent, so we call the aniyata, occasional fetters. So some mental fetters not always associate, although they can associate with the consciousness, they are not always associated. So in this case, we need to consider about the Abhidhamma and Virati. So 2 Abhidhamma and 3 Viratis become variables. So here should be combined separately and occasionally. If one associate with the consciousness, the other 4 will be exception. This is one thing. And because the associate separately. And for occasionally, we need to consider even one associate sometime, not always. That's why we still can remove the number. So if we fully enumerate 38 for the first couplet, and 37 for second and third, and 36, this is at most. But if we count for the first one, if we count simultaneously, how many can be simultaneously possible? 34, because 1 out of 5 can associate, not 5 altogether associate with the first one. That's why we need to count simultaneously 34 only. And if we say always mean we cannot make lesson this always. These are except making exception all these variable. Only 33 remain. So we can say that Anya Samana 13 and except with the Abhamanya, 20 beautiful feathers always arise with the past couplet. So this is variables for the first couplet. So can you make the second one? For second, at most, how many?
At most 37.
37 simultaneously.
33.
33 and always
32.
32. So if you know this method, how to make change, so for at most simultaneously and always in the great wholesome Mahakusala is easy. This slide is enough. You can count in different way. For the fourth couplet, you can count 36 at most, and how many? 32 simultaneously and 31 always, like this. So this is an important message, when you learn about the Abhidhamma as the beginner. But for the traditional way, if we try to follow the Pali explanation, because Pali always shortened, is quite difficult. So given this method, how to count the utmost number and how to make them change into simultaneously and always, by following this principle, then we can understand. So let's continue. Here, the how we becomes the always is removing and unfit adjuncts, and simultaneously adding only one, because they all separately come. Okay, so for the resultant, you remember resultant? First couplet?
The first couplet is 33.
33, and second couplet?
32.
32, the third couplet?
32.
32, and fourth couplet?
31.
31, right. It's no difficulty at all. So here, the reason explained the two illimitative. Why? Because they refer to the illimitative. Abhamanya take the solely sense they refers to the great resorter. So they take the solely sense phenomena as their object. So here in this case, the resultant consciousness in next chapter, chapter 3, when we learn about the function they can perform. Each consciousness, whenever they arise, they need to perform the specific function. If we know which consciousness can perform how many functions, and what kind of function, and we know more clearly. So in the great resultant consciousness, they can perform the function of Paṭisandi, Bhavanga, Jutti, and also the Tararamana like this. So this function, during performing this function, it can take only the sense-sphere consciousness, sense-sphere phenomena as its object. It cannot reach to the sub-plane phenomena or Lokuttara phenomena as to take as object. That's why since this resultant consciousness take only sense-sphere phenomena as their object. Then for the illimitable, so illimitable take the concept of being, we already say the concept of being as their object. So here the object cannot be the same, never be the same. That is why whenever Mahavipaka, great result and consciousness arise, Abhidhamma become exception. Okay. And what about the Vidati? Why Vidati cannot associate even sometime? So here, during the moment of great result, this is very, especially three function of the Paṭisandi, Bhavanga, Jutti. These are considered as the passive. And Tararamana is just registration. It is translated as registration. As just a follower of the Javana does not make change. It is considered as like their, the buffalo is crossing the river or the stream. At that moment, stream, the waters are going downstream, but because the buffalo cross, due to the movement of the buffalo, the water a little bit follow to the let's say the particle. I don't know how to say that. So not to the downstream, a little bit more. In the same way, very weak the registration as a resultant. That's why the resultant itself is product of wholesome and unwholesome karma. So in that moment, there's no refraining. Deliberately refraining is impossible at the moment of great result and consciousness. So cannot avoid from wrong or to perform the right. It's impossible. That's why it does not have the nature of Vidati. It cannot match with the nature of Vidati. So Vidati always become exception in case of great result and consciousness. Here, can you guess, is there any variation always simultaneously or at most for the great resultant?
No variation.
No variation, because all variation are exception already. That is why in the great resultant consciousness, no variation. Right? So if you make the variation here, you will be wrong because already the exception, all of them are exception. Okay, so let's continue to the great functional Mahakriya. So for past couplet, how many?
35.
35 only, because here great functional Vidati is exception already. So 35. And second?
34.
34 without jnana. And third?
34.
34 without piti with jnana. And for the fourth?
33.
33, great. And so what about for functional? Is there any variation or not?
Yes, because of Abhidhamma.
Right. So Abhidhamma sometimes all drop become always, right? If we remove the Abhidhamma, two Abhidhamma is become 33. This is always. If we add each or one of them, it become 34. It is simultaneously, and if we add both of them together, and 35. So functional consciousness also easy to make the variation. So let's consider about the reason why Virati is excluded. As I mentioned that Araha, having cut off all defilements, so do not need to deliberately refrain from evil deeds. So there's no performance of Virati in the Arahat mind. This become exception. Therefore, illimitable, so illimitable already, they here combine it separately and occasionally. This makes the variation for the illimitable. So when the Arahat practice the Karuna or Mudita, one of them can associate. And when that's not, they just performing something good, not taking the being concept as it is object, the illimitable will not arise. Okay, so this becomes the variation. Then if we collect, so Mahakusala Phoneya, Mahawipaka Phoneya, Mahakriya Phoneya become 12 Neya. It's easy. So then, okay, so let's stop here and let's continue to discussion. So next lesson, we can finish the combination method. And thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Sayadaw, for the Abhidhamma lecture. We will now begin the question and answer session.
Okay.
On the Zoom meeting. For everyone else who's joining us on the live stream, thank you for joining us today. The live stream will end here, and we will now continue with the question and answer on the Zoom session. May all beings be healthy, happy, and peaceful, and may we soon realize the eternal peace of Nirvana.